Hey everybody, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here alone. Sam Ekstrom is off today, so he sent me alone to watch a 12-10 football preseason game here inside US Bank Stadium. Now, there was a lot to take away from this game, starting with the fact that the Vikings backup quarterback situation is just tough. Kellen Mond and Jake Browning again had very rough days here as Jake Browning came out and was unable to move the offense effectively, had a few inaccurate passes and even a Hail Mary that came about 10 yards short of getting to the goal line. Now, after the game, Mike Zimmer was asked about whether the Vikings would consider bringing in a veteran backup quarterback. It's possible that even old friend Sean Mannion might get cut by the Seattle Seahawks. And he said, well, there's monetary considerations to that. As we know, the Vikings are always up against the salary cap, although according to overthecap.com right now, they should have some space for a veteran backup if one is cut, depending on what other moves they might have to make. But Kellen Mond came in the game in the second half and failed to move the football very effectively, only completed about half of his passes, made one good throw to Amir Smith-Marset, but that was the only thing to write home about. So that's the story of the game, is that even with the starters in for a couple of possessions, it went punt, and missed field goal. And then the backup quarterbacks failed to get the ball into the end zone as well. On the defensive side, Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham were sort of pressed by Mike Zimmer to step up and rise to the challenge. And the entire linebacking group as well was asked to play a much better game than they did against the Denver Broncos. And I thought we saw that there were pressures created on Sam Ehlinger and Jacob Eason by Stephen Weatherly, had a few in the game. Armon Watts had a couple pressures as well. And then some big plays by the linebackers. Troy Dye gets a pick six on a tip ball where Bashaud Breeland made a very good play, and then he takes it to the house. We also saw Blake Lynch make a play on a third down where he shot into the backfield and stopped the Indianapolis Colts runner and forced them to kick a field goal. And then even Chaz Surratt, where Mike Zimmer said, yeah, he had some mistakes, but he also showed some things as well. And on special teams, Chaz Surratt made a terrific play, shooting down the field like he was shot out of a rocket and then hitting the punt returner as soon as he got the ball. Speaking of punt returners, Amir Smith-Marset was also another guy that stood out tonight, not for his receiving because the quarterback struggled so much to get the football to the wide receivers, but for his returning. He had a 41-yard punt return. He also had a 41-yard kick return, also had a 17-yard punt return. Mike Zimmer said after the game that he's dynamic, and you can see his explosiveness and how he's light on his feet, but the fact that the Vikings quarterbacks were not able to deliver the football to the receivers is limited how much we can really see. So the question that we walk away from in this game is somewhat like, do we care that this game happened, and how much matters from a game where the Vikings offense once again was completely unable to move the football? And I would say it doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot for the first team offense. They were playing without Dalvin Cook, without Justin Jefferson. It does maybe matter that Rashad Hill gave up a sack to Kwity Paye, who's a rookie, and blew by Rashad Hill to hit Kirk Cousins. That's not something that you want to see from a guy that likely, very, very likely is going to start at left tackle and someone who's been a swing tackle for their entire career. But the fact that the offense on the first team didn't move the ball very much doesn't really ever say anything about what they're going to do in the regular season. If you remember a couple of years ago, Cousins went 3 for 13 in a preseason game, and that didn't mean a thing. I mean, he ended up having his best career season in 2019. But Mike Zimmer said that he thinks that the first team offense still does need some work in Kansas City when they play next week. I thought that was interesting because you even saw today the risk of playing your starters. Where Kirk Cousins threw a little slant route to Adam Thielen. He kind of knocked his leg against a Colts defender, and Zimmer said after the game that Cousins has a bruise on his thigh. Now, that's not a huge deal for a football player to get a bruise, but it just shows you how easy it is, even on a simple slant route, for somebody to get dinged up a little bit. And I think they would be taking a risk in Kansas City if they decided to play the starters, but it sounds like we're going to see at least a little bit of that. Going back to the special teams part of it, we saw a better performance from Britton Colquitt today, a great punting performance, actually averaged 46 yards per punt. Greg Joseph missed the 51-yarder, just a little bit wide right, came back, made a 49-yarder. We still don't know really how the team feels about Greg Joseph, if he's going to be their kicker or if they're going to check the waiver wire at the end of training camp. Greg Joseph overall has had a very good training camp, but with the 2 field goals tonight, misses from 51, did have plenty of distance on the kick. I don't know if that makes a difference to the Vikings or not. A couple of other interesting comments from Mike Zimmer when he was asked about Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham. He said they don't know yet, but we kind of know who is going to be playing that position across from Danielle Hunter. And I couldn't figure out whether to take that as they've decided between Weatherly and Wanham who's starting, or if Everson Griffin is going to be a factor, because the Vikings did bring in Everson Griffin for a workout last week, and they have not announced which way they'll go, if they're going to sign Everson Griffin or not. But it sounds like that position is decided. Stephen Weatherly, again, did have a good night tonight, but if Zimmer was saying that right after the game, then that would indicate that they would know before even tonight. And also interesting that both players were playing with the second teamers. So they started and then moved all the way into the second part of the game when the second teamers came in. Also, Mike Zimmer said that they're being extra precautionary with Xavier Woods, who did not play tonight, and Anthony Barr, who also didn't play and has missed quite a few practices. He said that they are concerned about Anthony Barr and his health, which maybe puts week 1 in question. Nick Vigil is the second linebacker. Blake Lynch was the guy who got linebacker 3 duties today. So some interesting comments there from Mike Zimmer about the health and the different battles. And another thing that Mike Zimmer talked about was Cam Dantzler and the fact that he came off the bench with the second team rather than playing with the first team in place of Patrick Peterson. That was actually Chris Boyd. So Chris Boyd is a guy that we wondered, is he going to be on the bubble this year with some depth at cornerback? Could he be edged out of this roster? And instead, because Dantzler struggled against Denver, and then when he did come in the game, he didn't play particularly well either in this game. You have to wonder about where he stands on the depth chart. Well, Mike Zimmer said flat out, Chris Boyd is ahead of him right now on the depth chart. So this is a guy in Cam Dantzler that we thought was going to be maybe taking a year to step back a little bit with Bashaud Breeland and then develop and then take over as the starter next year. And the same development plan that we saw for Trey Waynes or Xavier Rhodes or Mackenzie Alexander. And instead, now a former 7th rounder has taken over that position, and Dantzler allowed a 28-yard pass into his coverage here tonight. So clearly they're not feeling as confident in where Cam Dantzler is going from where they were maybe even at the beginning of training camp. So that's another thing that we'll be watching, as well as what they'll decide to do with their starters when they go into Kansas City. Just one more preseason game, folks, and then we'll get the real deal of Vikings and Cincinnati for week 1. So thanks so much for watching this Purple Insider Extra. A reminder to listen to the full post-game podcast, The Breakdown with Will Ragatz of Sports Illustrated. Go find that wherever you get your podcasts, and the players who stood out on purpleinsider.substack.com. We'll catch you later.